Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Dave as usual, and today I am hanging out with Shane Madej. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing all right, Dave. How about you?
Good. You're over there on the East Coast. Or, I mean, West Coast. I'm on the
Yeah,
East
I'm all the
Coast.
way over here on the West Coast.
So it's still a little early.
Yeah, well, it's,
Hello,
shaking
welcome
off the
to Nerdarchy, for
sleepies.
nerds, by nerds. And I forgot to mute something as
Oh,
usual.
classic.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've made that flub, but it's bound to happen again eventually.
This is it's the Zoom era. There's a lot of flubs going on.
Yeah, but on the plus side, everyone has their clothes on, so
That's true. I put on a nice jacket here.
yeah, I see that.
uh,
So,
Getting dressed
so
up.
you kind of came to our attention because you guys been doing some stuff more recently in our wheelhouse, and that would be D&D. You guys started doing a show that you guys kind of produce, break up, and put out in like bite-sized chunks.
Yeah, making them bite-sized was surprisingly one of the larger challenges of it. But yeah, we started it shortly after everyone started working from home because we're lucky enough to be able to edit from home and shoot from home. And it was really just kind of luckily when we had started our channel back in January or so, we had shot out, which is youtube.com/watcher, just so I'm putting the plugs in.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And in the pinned post, I have some
Nice.
some links, pinned over there, so you can track
Check it out.
Yeah, check it out. Track Shane down.
But yeah, so when we started the company, we had shot 7 different series with, these sort of like pilot seasons of each one having about 4 episodes. Then we rotate through them. So those were going up every Thursday, and now they're on every Friday, actually. But when quarantine started, we were like, oh, we gotta do something.
Yeah.
We gotta sort of buy ourselves some runway here. And really, it was more than that. It was just like sort of a need to feel creative, right stepping into it, because we had sort of had some stuff kind of in development, but it suddenly needed time to be reworked for our current situation. So while we were sort of re-tinkering all that stuff, we were like, well, what can we do immediately? And I think Ryan Bergaro was the first one to say, what if we do some D&D? And I was like, I was thinking that exact thing. It was like we had like a brainstorm meeting, and
You're like, we don't really want to work. What do you want to do? What if we play D&D and pretend it's work?
Yeah. And, going into it, I had played D&D in Chicago with my friends for, I want to say 5 years or so. We had a pretty fun group for a very long time. And then I moved out here, and we've attempted to do some online sessions. It's a little tricky, though. Surprisingly, it's more just, I think people are just busier now. It's tough to schedule in the time, because the few online sessions we did, I feel like they went off without a hitch. But so I was pretty eager to jump into it with Watcher, and I was like, I'll be the DM. I'm the only one who has actually, spent a lot of time doing this.
You're the nerdiest one of everyone.
I'm the nerdy one. I'm the nerdy one of the group. But also, my experience is solely just playing as a player and sort of observing my good friend who was our DM and being like, okay, I kind of see what he's doing here. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of. I don't think not that I wasn't prepared as much as I could have been, though that's true, because we did turn it around in about a week, the first episode, or maybe 2 weeks. But it was just as soon as we started our first session, I was like, oh, I wish I could have spent 6 months reading, everything I can about this campaign and just sort of internalizing all of it. And curiously, I'm not even sure how most people go about it. So I'm actually curious to know how you generally approach sort of starting a campaign and absorbing as much information as you can.
So I've been gaming for a long time at this point, probably, 30 years or so. And I used to write everything out the way you might find in a module or a pre-written adventure. And at some point it dawned on me I wasted more time doing that than anything. And now it's like, if you ever seen the memes about like the prepared DM, and it's like sexy goblin, is written down on their notes. Yeah, that I do slightly better than that. Like usually I'll have like 3 sentences written down, an encounter in my back pocket, and be like, all right, let's see what they want to do. And it depends too on your group, right? Like you're playing with a bunch of creatives, so I would hazard the guess that they're gonna go and do stuff, right, and make stuff happen, and not necessarily wait for cues all the time. So when you have players like that, I find that the more prepared material you have, the less likely you are to use it, because you're going to be reacting to whatever it is they are. It's not like a video game where people are confined to like here's where the world ends, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can only talk to these NPCs. They're going to do whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm more of an improv GM. My partner Ted is more of a improv GM as well. And that just came from used to being a super prepared, write way more content than I will ever need GM to. Why am I doing this? They're just going to talk to that one NPC that I made up on the spot anyway.
I like my idealized version of that role is moving toward like an improv, more sort of pulling it out of your back pocket DM. This being my first campaign, I was like, absolutely not, especially because we were filming, and I also had to, which this came up, I think maybe in the second or third episode, because we sort of moved through it, and there was like a very natural stopping point in the first one. And then I think the second or third episode, we got to the end of it, and I was like, okay, well, we've sort of hit our time limit here, and it feels like a natural stopping point. And then we started editing it, and the end point was like, okay, well, we're going to go into this room. Like, it was the most anticlimactic thing in the world. So we actually shot like a pickup battle to cap off the episode, because it's just difficult. Like I remember when I played in Chicago, our sessions would be 3 to 6 hours long, maybe longer if it was a weekend day. I remember one time we rented a cabin up in Wisconsin and played for like an entire weekend.
Yeah.
And so figuring out a way to shove them into 45-minute segments with each time with like a sort of satisfying cliffhanger, I kind of had to make a lot of stuff up on the fly. That was like as sort of loosey-goosey as I got, kind of.
And there's nothing wrong with that, because like whenever someone asks me, it's like, how much should I prepare? It's like, the answer is different for everybody. You should prepare as much as you feel like you need to. Like, what makes you feel good as the DM about to run the game. There's a huge difference between someone who is super extroverted and maybe he's been playing the game for a while, versus someone who's brand new and they're nervous. Like, prepare everything, right? Take all the time you need, and maybe you can always rework that stuff in later. We do have some questions starting to pop up.
Oh, great.
Dania wants to know, will you be the DM for season 2?
If we do a season, we had talked about maybe potentially doing one again when we're all able to be together at some point. But the other reason we did it is because it just, it like was a very easy something we could all work on, while we were all sort of getting these other projects in, through this sort of adjustment phase. So it was definitely like, oh, we've got some spare hours here. Let's throw ourselves at something instead of sort of, just twiddling our thumbs. So season 2 could potentially slot in at a point when we're, find time on our hands again. If we do it, I would for sure be DM again, I think, unless, Ryan really wanted to step up to the plate, but he seems pretty content taking a back seat on this one, as do the other players. Our experiences with this series were probably vastly different, as they were like, all right, let's log on, have some fun, be a character. And I was like, okay, so I was like, really, checking my notes, preparing everything.
Well, That is kind of the difference between being a player and a DM, right? The players, you generally just show up and do the thing that you're, as the DM, you're like, do I have enough stuff? I mean, even for an improv DM, you still get the like the pregame jitters and
Yeah,
do I have enough? Am I good enough? Like you ask all these questions. You start searching your soul prior to the game, and then it starts,
yeah.
and most people are fine. So Candy Cane wants to know, unrelated to D&D, but can we see the professor?
Oh, he's actually, yeah, he's over here. This is from my Puppet History series. He's actually kind of in a state of disrepair right now because he doesn't have his hat on.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's looking great. He looks a little fuzzy, but he's very busy these days.
Season 2, you should just replace all your players with puppets.
It's not a bad idea. I mean,
I would love that.
I've found during quarantine that the puppet is sort of a great workaround. And I've been kind of stewing on ways to shoot stuff and then use puppets with it after the fact, like almost like a audio podcast. And then
Yeah.
have you seen, there's a new Netflix show that's kind of doing that. It's the, I forgot the Midnight something. It's the guy who did, it's Pendleton Ward's new show, who did Adventure Time. Midnight Gospel?
I did not see that. It's puppets, though?
No, it's not puppets. It's animation, but it's essentially they take a podcast conversation and then just that becomes this conversation that two characters are having as they move through like a plot, basically. It's very unique. A lot of the topics are kind of like spacey, deeply philosophical things. So it's a little repetitive, but it's really funny. I've only watched like 2 episodes.
Yeah, I feel like we're all probably going through so much Netflix right now.
We are, yeah. I'm burning through Avatar: The Last Airbender, a rewatch of that, which is a. Have you watched that?
I have not watched it all the way through. I've definitely like popped in here and there, but now it's on Netflix, so I'm very much.
Now it's on Netflix. I've attempted to rewatch it a few times, and every time I start a rewatch, I kind of forget that season 1 is not a slog, but it really pales in comparison to seasons 2 and 3.
Yeah, like they haven't found their groove yet.
Yeah, but man, I just rounded the corner on season 2, and it's incredible. It's crazy that it aired on Nickelodeon.
Yeah, my son's 19 and he just started watching it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, recently. I'm like, good, you're finally watching good anime.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's been watching some weird things. Like there was this volleyball one, and he's like, "No, this is the best. You don't understand."
Like, yeah, I'm out of the loop on a lot of that.
But. Yeah, me too. I'm old. I'm just old. Yeah. I don't have enough room in my life for that many hobbies.
Yeah, well now maybe more slightly, but yeah.
True. So, the players in your game, had they all played D&D before or anybody new?
That's actually well, so I'm trying to think. Ryan and Steven had back, I want to say like 2 or 3 years ago when we were at BuzzFeed, we had, sort of a smaller Slack room of a tighter crew of people. And at some point, one of them was like, we should play D&D. And I was like, I'll DM, I'll do it. Because I was still itching to do it. And I had yet to find like a really good group to play with in LA. Because there's plenty of people in LA who seem like they really want to play D&D. But then when you try to schedule it, just doesn't.
Everyone's busy in LA. Like they're all looking for work. They're all trying to make things happen.
It's a stressful city to live in.
Yeah, I mean, I've met through doing this a lot of people from LA that are gamers. But I think like a big part of it is just everyone is just super busy. Like,
yeah,
people that aren't like trying to build a career in a super hard industry are really busy. So you add to that, I think, and that's just like a compounding fact.
Yeah, there's also, I feel like maybe 90% of the people in LA who do actually play it are probably doing it for like a television show or something.
Yeah, and that's it. Like I had met a lot of the folks from Geek and Sundry, Satine Phoenix, and kind of like that circle. Even like Dragons and Things, they're all out there as well. So there's definitely a scene. There's definitely a scene out there for sure.
So it was kind of tough to find people, but at BuzzFeed there was 3 or 4 people who were like, yeah, let's get a campaign going. I was like, great, let's do it. And then since it was in this Slack room, there were other people who were like, I'll play too. And I think we had, I should have foreseen this, but there were like 7 people. And I remember talking to my one friend who had DM'd for us in Chicago. I was like, okay, I got this campaign going. He was like, how many people do you have? I was like, well, 7. And he was like, that's going to be impossible. And to our credit, we did run 2 very good sessions, but then the scheduling just became sort of disastrous. But Ryan and Steven were in that campaign. And Ryan, I remember, was sort of a basketball-centric character, just like, the jockiest D&D character you could think of. And I don't remember Steven's character. Apologies to Steven. But so they had done a couple sessions previously. Katie, I'm not entirely sure if she had. I don't think she had. But I could be wrong about that.
So Mick wants to know, how did you first start playing D&D?
How did I first start playing? You know what? I graduated college in 2009, and I did not have a good job out of college because there were no jobs anywhere really. I worked for a production company that, we made like hospital videos and just real corporate things. And I remember none of my other friends had fairly compelling jobs. And so we just had a lot of free time and did not really if it was a Thursday night, we'd be like, oh, whatever, let's all hang out till like 2 a.m. Guess we have to go to work tomorrow, but does it matter that much? Or sort of out of that energy, we just started a campaign. And I don't know, I feel like in 2009, I'm trying to think of like the sentiment toward it, because it was not at a point where, like in the 90s, it was, people were like looked down upon it or something. But in 2009, it still wasn't a huge thing for people to do. Especially, I don't know how big it was on the internet then.
Yeah, it wasn't popular then. It wasn't the satanic panic of the 80s.
No.
The 90s, it would have still been nerdy and you'd definitely been made fun of. 2000s, they probably just don't care as much. And it wasn't until, I wouldn't say, it was like 2014, 2015 that the resurgence actually really, really took off.
Yeah. And then, I mean, because now I just know, like, it's weird to just know so many people who do it or have done it. Especially in LA, I think it's just kind of trendy here,
Well, I mean, you have all those theater kids that probably would have done it in school. Where are they going to go but LA, right? If they were to keep going. True. So the convergence. Vanessa wants to know if you plan on running your own campaign and doing any homebrewing.
I would love to. It just seems so daunting because when I was really digging into the Waterdeep Dragon Heist campaign book, I was like, man, so it's so robust. And not that homebrewing you have to like go that ham on it, but I'd like to. It'd be fun. And I've also never done anything outside of D&D, like any sort of Arkham or like Lovecraft kind of stuff. I've always wanted to do an RPG that's outside of the D&D brand and just do something a little more off the beaten path.
We got a really important question here from Manga Blush. Why don't you believe in ghosts? It almost like it's a question, but it definitely seems like an accusation.
It's a question. It is an accusation on BuzzFeed Unsolved. That is sort of my bread and butter. We go ghost hunting, and I don't actually believe in them, which is fine. It's okay to believe in them, okay to not believe in them. But I do have a lot of people who, because we've shot, I don't know how many episodes of that show there are, but close to 100 at this point, I think. And we've been to a lot of haunted locations. And I still get people who come up to me and are like, you've been to this many locations. You must believe a little bit now. And I'm like, no, unfortunately not. Same goes for my co-host, who now believes in ghosts more than ever, and I don't believe in ghosts more than ever.
It's great. Isn't that funny how like two different people can see the same things and come away with two completely different rationales, right, from what they've witnessed and seen.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. Actually, I would argue that he maybe believes in ghosts less as well. So I claim that as a victory for me, because if the needles are moving, it's me remaining more in the not believing camp, and him, instead of believing more, just moving closer to my side. So if we're talking momentum, then I win. So not that it's a competition.
Don't worry, Shane. The ghosts still believe in you. That's the important thing.
Yeah.
So Grace has a bit of a dirty question. You can answer or not answer this one. What character from this campaign was your favorite?
You know what? That is a dirty question. There are. I was sort of delighted with how each of them threw themselves at their character. Katie was, this sort of hulking mercenary. Ryan was like sort of a guy you'd meet at a bar, and then but Stephen Lim playing Stephanos was probably maybe just like Katie and Ryan. I expected to really go for it, but Stephen I thought would sort of play it safe and kind of maybe have a difficult time figuring out his character, but he like just sort of blew me away with his performance, because he really it didn't seem like he was really trying to be funny. He just sort of had worked out, when someone works out like character traits where it seems like they're just sort of effortlessly reviving them, and you're like, oh, well, you've really sort of chiseled out who you are here. Because he would, like in the first episode, he gave some sort of compassionate speech like, you're my friends, I love you. And he also just worked in this detail about, he was like, oh, I'm the youngest of 13, a family of 13, all passed away. Which was just like his casual reference to his entire family being wiped out. Just really delighted me. And I think the first time he said it, he sort of laughed it off. And I was like, no, can we go back and can you just please deliver that again? Because it's too wonderful. So if we're handing out awards, I would give a little trophy to Steve Lim for really knocking my socks off.
He snuck up on you.
He did.
And I know what you mean. So I know what you mean. He, some people just live in the character for this session, for that game. So now you've played D&D kind of recreationally with your friends, and now you've played it as a show. Do you have any takeaways from those two different, doing it for those two different venues, basically?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that, it's interesting because as you're doing it, you have to kind of think like, what is interesting as a player, but then what is also interesting for someone to watch. And it's kind, because like as you're playing, for me when I was playing in campaigns, it was always fun, like the logistics of a battle, especially on like a map space where you're, X person is over here, you're over here, you like the sort of movement strategy of it all, where you're all sort of working as a team. Someone just happens to jump into a space that's, tactically advantageous. Like little things that are exciting for you in the moment, but just 100% would not play on screen. And I tried to watch some other series, but not too much, just to get a sense. And the other, I used to listen to Harmontown a lot, which was Dan Harmon. He did Community, but they used to play D&D a lot on their podcast. So I sort of had a rough idea that you would have to do some more combat in the sort of theater of the mind, which I was not used to. I want to say almost all of the encounters that we did in my previous campaign were just on map spaces. So that was kind of new to me. But I know people had done that. Where do you fall on like combat? Do you like having a space? Do you save it for sort of more climactic battles, or are you okay with a lot of stuff being sort of in the mind?
So Theater of the Mind, if we're playing online, is we use exclusively. Right, there's plenty of great virtual tabletops out there that you can use and move the tokens around, but we're kind of low tech, low key when it comes to that. Now, when we first started, it was always Theater of the Mind back at AD&D, and then third edition came out, which was already more tactical, but also inevitably one of the DM at that time would attack one of the characters and was like, how did you hit the wizard with the ogre? He was in the back behind everybody, right? So, so we kind of got tired of that. And that DM was kind of very antagonistic anyway. So that kind of like inspired us to get a sheet of plastic, make our own grid. And we would just use D4s and D6s.
That's fun.
Just for positioning. And, prior DM, when I first started, if things were really complex, he would do X's and O's on a piece of paper, right?
Yeah.
But then, third edition came out with these wonderful pre-painted minis that you didn't have to do anything. So we started using more of them. It wasn't like we're doing all the terrain and everything, but for the more complex battles, we had these minis. We'd pull them out, put them on the board, and it just made it easier for the tactical stuff. And then sometimes if it was a really simple combat, we wouldn't even bother.
Yeah.
Then Ted got into crafting a lot more recently. So like now there's a whole lot more with minis and terrain when we play in person. Now like we have a group that plays offline, and they're calling for him to set up a second camera and keep doing his terrain builds. So we're kind of like all over the place with that stuff.
Yeah, I kind of enjoy, and when I played in Chicago, our DM was great because he kind of just sensed, and I think this is what I tried to do too, because this was kind of the advice he gave me. He would just kind of sense like what we found enjoyable or what kind of piqued our curiosity, and he would try to kind of reward anything imaginative that someone would come up with to the extent that it wasn't a detriment to the game. To some huge degree, and just try to reward creativity. And so taking that approach, I knew like I think people would have more fun with the Theater of the Mind. But then when I started looking at some of the maps, like the pre-made maps, because I had tinkered with Roll20 a little bit, which was in the end just a little too complicated to use in the video. The maps were all so fun that I just wanted to go back into them because they're really beautiful look. And that's why I worked one into our last episode, or the second to last episode, because it was like a dungeon hideout, and it was just fun to finally navigate something for once in a way that felt very concrete and not so much just picture a dungeon hallway,
There's a lot of great ways to play the game, and there's so many cool things out there that you can put into it. Like, I don't know if you've seen the Beatles and Grimm sets that they now come out with. They're like this really high end, campaigns in a box essentially for whatever Wizards of the Coast does. But they're like, it's like $500 for like their top end, and it just comes with all like these cool accessories and stuff to really like take the game to the next level. So if there's maps, they have like all big maps that you can lay out and beautifully drawn.
I'm looking at this right now. It looks very good.
So All Hail the Watcher wants to know, hello, I'm new to D&D, but would like to get involved. I'm planning on viewing the Watcher's D&D. Do you have any tips for someone new learning? And you're awesome, Shane.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it depends if you're trying to, I guess, DM, or if there were a lot of people I was surprised. And maybe I don't know. I guess this didn't occur to me, but I saw a lot of people who would comment on our videos who are like, wow, I really didn't understand how D&D worked, but I love this, which is, I don't know if people realize how fairly simple it is. I mean, simple to the degree that your DM doesn't necessarily have to make it punishing, or if you want to get into it, just to watch some online campaigns, I think, which may not give you the full breadth of all the stuff you're keeping track of, and but it's pretty easy to get into. You've got to find some people who are equally willing to learn with you. It's nice, I find, to have maybe one person in the group who has some experience and could possibly, steer everybody. But if not, don't let that prevent you. Just look up some campaigns, find some people who want to do it. You got to find a DM, but find someone to fall on that sword. DMing has its own rewards, though.
It does. I mean, I've even seen people that like, oh, I really want to play this, and they didn't know anyone who played. They've corralled their friends, and they just started running a game. D&D is, and role-playing games tend to be more daunting from the outside than the inside. Once you get in there, it gets a lot simpler. And the trick is you don't have to know everything all at once. Like, you can figure it out as you go. It becomes, it's a learning experience. And if you can attach yourself to a group that's already established, I find most people are more than willing to share the hobby and teach new players how to play. I mean, that is by far the easiest way. I personally, when there's a game that I haven't played before, I like to be able to jump in just with enough information, either make a character, get a pre-gen, and be like, hey, GM, I just want to learn as I go. I'll tell you what I want to try and do. You tell me what to roll.
Yeah.
And we'll figure it out. I mean, I just learn better that way.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, too. There's no penalty for not knowing how to play. Like, you can jump in with a limited amount of knowledge, and then week to week, if you don't know something, you just look it up, learn it, and your DM will not be like, how dare you? You're out of the club. As far as I know, you should probably find a DM who doesn't do that.
Agreed. Yeah, it's a social gathering, right? And it's a game we do while we get together. So hopefully you're doing it with people that you would want to be friends with.
I want to say the majority, like when I played in Chicago, I was excited to play because it was a blast, but at the same time, it was like, everybody would bring snacks. It was just it was largely an excuse to eat chips nonstop for 4 hours.
And drink Mountain Dew.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so that's the funny thing too. Like, I've gone through different evolutions of my gaming where there was a large chunk of time where I really didn't care about the game as much as just getting together with my friends and kind of hanging out. And it's a thing you do. It's like, we weren't into that sports ball thing, and we weren't like big drinkers or druggies or going to strip clubs. We just like to roll funny shaped dice and hang out together. My wife wasn't. She's more like nerd adjacent than nerdy.
Yeah.
So like she kind of like always knew what I was doing on Saturday nights, and it's like, I mean, I remember one of our buddies who began with us for a long time. His fiance came to like check it out, and I think she was really just checking up on him to see what he was really doing with his Saturday nights. And she like came for like a session or two, looked around, been like, "Yep, I have nothing to worry about," and went back to doing whatever she usually does on Saturday nights. So Caitlin wants to know: are you looking forward to BuzzFeed's Unsolved Supernatural after quarantine is done?
Yeah, we are. This is generally the summer is when we film our Supernatural episodes, and we do alternating seasons. It's sort of true crime, then supernatural, true crime, supernatural. And true crime is always like a really nice palate cleanser from supernatural because I'm tired of walking around dusty basements and abandoned buildings and yelling at air. And then we do a season of true crime, and I'm tired of talking about depressing unsolved murder cases. So it's nice to get outside and go ghost hunting again with our pals. Because true crime, we also shoot all on, in studio, and then supernatural will fly out to wherever to investigate some buildings. But it's always nice just to travel because we've got a pretty tight knit crew. It's like me, Ryan. We've got a camera person, a sound person, a producer. It's just, I think it's usually like 5 or 6 of us. And it's, we've been shooting the show for 4 or 5 years now. So we're all like the most friendly, easygoing people. And I know other people who have traveled with, other crews. And I've also traveled with other crews where it's like not as not that it's ever a chore, but not everyone like is the best of pals, and we always just have a lot of fun when we travel. So
So it's more close knit, this group.
it's more close knit, yeah. We're, you can only walk through many freezing haunted prisons before you feel like a bit of
How
a work family.
how far and wide do you travel for those episodes?
Generally, we stick to the U.S. We did one season, not a season, but we did a string of episodes in London a few years ago, and there were times when we were looking at other haunted locations in other countries. It's somewhat difficult to lock down. Like Japan probably has a bunch of really interesting places, but it's just a lot harder to produce. It's like in the U.S. you call someone in Kansas and they're like, "No, we don't want you here." And you're like, "Okay, cool." But with Japan, and also because the other half of it is they do a lot of heavy research on these places, so the language barrier of that just makes it more of an ask as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, there's plenty of other places we'd love to go, but generally we stay in the U.S. Recently, someone tweeted like a map of all the places we've been, and it's pretty close to like the coasts, but then the Sally House is kind of dead center in the middle of the country. We've never gone to Chicago, where I'm from. I think that's sort of a passive aggressive move on Ryan Bergara's part.
Yeah.
But because Chicago, if you believe in ghosts, is probably a deeply haunted city to you.
Well, it appears prominently in the Dresden Files.
That's right. So it's it's on our list, but yeah, I'm missing it. I do, because it's just fun. I mean, I don't believe in ghosts, but it's fun to walk around a building with a camera on your head and a flashlight and be spooky.
So it sounds like to me you've got like a traveling D&D group, like a captive audience.
Kinda. We actually tried to set up a group with mostly those people at one point, and again, it was just like schedules were not lining up. And
oh no, I mean when you're on the road, you just grab them after the.
That's
after
actually
the
probably that's what we should do. Though we're usually done filming at like 4 a.m.
Oh,
it is weirdly. Our travel shoots tend to have a different vibe.
Yeah.
And there was someone who was on a travel shoot with us recently who was like, "Oh, I've never been on an Unsolved shoot. I hear you guys go pretty wild." And we were like, "I don't think we do." And then like we cut to like 6 hours later and we were all at like a karaoke bar like screaming or something. But the thing is, we can only start shooting after the sun goes down. So we'll shoot from like 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. Then we go back to the hotel, and then we have the next night off because you're staying up that late.
Yeah.
So then the next night we'll just be like, "Oh, where do you want to go? Let's go out, grab a drink somewhere or something." And
yeah, see there's your D&D nights.
That's the D&D time.
Or before the shoot, you're like, "Hey, let's get ready for this thing," and they show up, and you got the maps out and the minis, and they're like, "What? This doesn't look like what we're doing at all."
Yeah, we're already traveling with a bunch of ghost hunting equipment. I'll just add my extra crate full of dye.
There you go. Hey, D&D Beyond, you can get everything digitally and just have
That's
it
true.
Have it
Yeah,
on your laptop or phone.
I did sign up for that for this campaign, and I was sort of overjoyed at the. I also never. I don't think I realized how deep the web goes in terms of like when you're reading through a campaign and they're like, Volo's written this incredible monster index, and I'm like, ooh, I want that.
Yeah.
And it's a thing you can buy. They've just really nailed it in terms of like making me want to buy things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're one of our sponsors, and they've been a sponsor for a long time. But when it first came out, it reminded me of I don't know if you remember the digital tool set from 4th edition, which the D&D Insider, I think it was called, which I really liked. It was actually the part I liked the most about that edition. So when I saw them launching this, it kind of reminded me of that. And now it's getting even better, especially if you're playing online. Like we have a in-house game for Nerdarchy, and I love the fact that I can just click my character sheet and it now rolls the dice for you and stuff.
Yeah. I love the tactile sensation of rolling dice, though.
Yeah. So
Just the clang of the plastic.
I definitely get that. Well, we had Adam Bradford on. He's the head of D&D Beyond, and they're talking about Bluetooth dice.
Whoa.
Yeah, like if they can figure it out where like you roll them and then the dice roll on the screen.
Oh,
Then,
so you roll like actual physical dice that you roll, and then your phone just knows what you rolled,
yeah,
or the screen,
yeah, they're Bluetooth enabled, and then they're like so. One of the things they'll probably do eventually is with digital dice, you can do things that you can't do with physical dice, right? You can put liquids in them, you can have them explode when you make certain rolls and stuff. So it'll be cool when they start doing that, and then if they ever get the Bluetooth dice that actually marry those two components together.
That'd be crazy. Yeah, I mean, I haven't really taken a dip in this because it's tough to come by and seems relatively expensive. But like anytime I see like those digital tabletops or like people starting to tinker with like ARG, like those, like I've seen people wear those glasses where they had like a Minecraft thing on the tabletop. Maybe that was like Microsoft or something. But I was like, I want that to be publicly available and affordable. Right now, I don't have room in my apartment for a giant digital gaming tabletop, but I want one.
We've seen Kickstarters where they're basically tiles you put down, like cards, and then you look through your phone.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it gives you the AR effect, which is super cool. I want to jump back in the chat and grab this question from David. Any tips for a in-person DM trying to teach the game on call-based format? I'm trying to talk them into Roll20 so they can still visualize their surroundings and troubles.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, it was really in the way that for the players, and like I was saying, if you're new to this, there's no penalty for learning. Obviously, one of the comforting things to me is because I needed comfort when I dived into this, but I had talked to the guy who DM'd our previous game, and I was like, how did you, I mean, it really seemed flawless. You really seemed to nail it. And he was like, I was making mistakes all the time. You guys just didn't really notice, and most people won't notice if, especially if it's new people, you can really sort of cover your tracks and still guide them, even if you make a little mistake here and there. So that was kind of my approach. I was like, well, I'm learning this as well. I'll try my best to teach them. If I make a mistake, I'm not going to point it out too much, or so they'll kind of learn with you. When it comes to teaching over like the internet like this, I don't know. I feel like the campaign I did, and maybe most of them are like this. I know they're suited for certain levels, but they do seem to sort of roll out the difficulty of stuff in increments. So everyone's kind of starting from a place where you're working with the basic sort of functions of the players. So it's very much knowledge by immersion, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple things. So it sounds like, David, you're playing in person, and now you want to bring the game online. Just be like, hey guys, I know we like to play in person, and this is how we normally do it. But for a while, let's try this out until we can go back to that, right? If you just pitch it as like, hey, this is what we're doing for now, I think people will be more accepting in that. And you can do it through Discord, you can do it through Skype, Zoom, maybe Google Hangouts is still around. I don't know. It's a thing that's always going away, but never seems to. So there's tons of different ways that you can do it. When you're having difficulties and people are not quite understanding, if you're using something, most things do have a screen share capabilities. You can just screen share to show them. And there's going to be a learning curve, but I think after a couple sessions, everyone will kind of fall right into it. Has been my experience. But the biggest thing with anything is just get in there and do it.
Yeah. I mean, you stressing again, like I was saying, just there's no punishment for for just learning, so it's no big deal. And Roll20 is. I had a great time because I played as a player with Roll20, and I found it really fun. I think it's a little bit of a learning curve for the DM, but I had a blast with it. And you can also choose to which degree you use Roll20. Like you can use it as solely as like a map visualization to kind of give people an idea of the physical space, or you can go really deep with that thing and just have people's characters sort of keep track of their points, and it's pretty robust.
There's a great Chrome extension called Beyond 20.
Oh, really?
And if you're using D&D Beyond and Roll20, basically it allows you to kind of use your character sheet from D&D Beyond and roll everything from your character sheet into Roll20.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so if you're using the dice roller from Roll20, that's a nice integration if you happen to be using both of those things. And it kind of cuts out like the stuff you have to learn. Mm-hmm. So like if you're already familiar with using one thing, you can just use that and it integrates nicely. And that's one of the things we've been doing. So one of the questions I have for you is, like, you hear actors often talk about working with animals and children. Where do puppets fall into that range?
Very, very complicated. I actually, I have not had a lot of puppeting experience. When we were sort of cooking up show ideas last summer, I had a history show on BuzzFeed that I always loved, and I wanted to kind of find some sort of spiritual sequel to it. And I was like, but I think I want to use puppets. And Ryan and Steven were like, sounds real funny. And then the deeper I got into it, the more I was like, I don't know if this is a good idea.
Did you
not a puppeteer?
Did you find a good group of puppets to work with? Because I look at Comet, right? And Comet looks like he'd be a real jerk to work with.
Yeah. I did find a good group of puppets to work with. Very cooperative. A lot of callbacks. It was a very sort of intense audition. But there was only one who was deeply entrenched in historical knowledge, and I don't know if that's because he just seems to have like a lot of firsthand experience with history, and I don't know where he got that, but somehow.
It's what they taught a puppet you.
I guess, yeah. But yeah, I just hang out backstage and make sure he's got waters when he's taking a break.
Nice. I know a friend that was going to be doing a D&D thing with puppets, and he never really did it. I was kind of sad. I was like, you know what? If you worked on that, I think it definitely have legs. That would be a lot of fun.
I think it would, yeah. I mean, puppets are, they're a rich avenue. They're very fun to work with, and the possibilities I'm finding the more I've been thinking of other things to do with it, I'm like, wow, this is, perfect for quarantine, because his puppet theater is, essentially an entire set that we can move, or I could just set up in my home on a table, which is a miracle.
What if you had the puppet teaching D&D? There you go.
That's I think we had sort of vaguely floated something like that. But we realized with the turnaround of these episodes, we were like, let's get this out really quick because it's quarantine and people are looking for stuff to watch.
I meant like short episodes, not like a full-on game.
I see.
Yeah.
It's something to think about. I just want to do more puppet content all the time, because I'm realizing like how beautiful it is to just be able to hide behind a giant piece of cardboard. Like I don't have to look nice. I can age horribly and still be doing it in 25 years. The puppets live forever. That's the beautiful thing.
And like the puppet could be like your id too. Like if you have these like areas of your personality you want to explore, you could use the puppet for the scapegoat.
Yeah. I'm also I'm not personally responsible for anything he says. I love it. He's great. He's a great guy. One of my favorite colleagues.
So Candy Cane seems a little obsessed with the professor here. Just saying. Shane, will the professor ever say his real name?
I don't know. There's a lot that we don't know about him in season 1. I don't know that we got a lot of lore about him. Maybe if there's a potential season 2, we'll dive into his backstory more or learn more hints. I'd love to know more. Well, the other thing too is when we were making season 1 of this, it did not occur to me that people would enjoy him so much. I was just like, yeah, it's a puppet show with a puppet teaching history. It never crossed my mind. And then episode 1 came out and people were like, I love the professor. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess he's like a funny character. I also remember the first day we were shooting, not that, I remember Ryan remarking that the professor's voice was largely similar to mine. And he expected it, I think, to sound cartoonish in some way. But he was like, that's his voice? I was like, yeah, I guess so. Not that I provide the voice or anything, but yeah, it was... and maybe that's why I thought, like, well, he's very similar to me execution-wise, so why people would lose their minds over him. But yeah, he's a great guy.
Maybe Patreon goal.
Yeah, we'll learn more. We'll learn more about it.
You just got to make all your Patreon goals about the professor and revealing more information.
Yeah, I mean, I would love nothing more when we're out of quarantine to shoot some sort of deep backstory on him with like cardboard sets. Maybe someday.
Yeah. So Arada wants to know, and I'm butchering the heck out of that. Apologies. Shane, did you ever play Vampire the Masquerade or Vampire the Dark Ages?
No. Are these RPGs?
Yeah, there are other tabletop RPGs.
Oh, that's what I was saying. I haven't played anything outside of D&D, and I would love to kind of look at some other kind of properties. Lovecraft is huge because he's open, he's, I think, like public domain, so he's everywhere.
Yeah, there's definitely a Call of Cthulhu game that's been around for a long time.
Yeah, Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, if you're interested in that, and there's tons of other whatever you're into, there is an RPG for that. And then there's also some generic ones to make whatever you feel isn't there. So there's definitely plenty of options. D&D is kind of like in the middle range when you talk about complexity, especially 5e, which is by far one of the easier editions. But then there's games that are much more complicated, and also games that are a bit more a lot easier to learn.
I'd love to play a really sort of banal one. It's just like just an RPG about living in Toledo or something.
Well, they have things like Kids on Bikes.
Where it's like
kind of like The Goonies or Stand By Me, like any of those 80s movies.
I love that.
Where it's like things are happening with the kids, but the adults don't believe you. So Vanessa has a question. It's kind of actually related to something I was going to ask as well. Have you watched any other YouTube D&D shows, Critical Role, Relics, and Rarities? You had mentioned kind of doing a little bit of prep before you got started, and I was wondering what shows you actually checked out.
I haven't actually watched a ton so much as listened to, because I listened to Harmontown for a very long time, and then I've listened to a little bit of the Adventure Zone. My girlfriend's a huge fan of the McElroy gang, and I like them too, but I listened to my brother and me more than the Adventure Zone. But I didn't want to go too deep on and I always do this, like anytime I'm doing something that feels like, tread ground at this point, I try not to go too deep on watching the other ones because I don't want to be too informed by them. And I kind of want to kind of make my own mistakes. I probably could have learned a lot from them, but just out of wanting to keep it sort of my best presentation of it, I tried to just kind of sequester myself and not watch too many. I watched a little bit of Critical Role to kind of get a feel for how they do it, and I decided, they do it wonderfully, and they've got a great like overlay, and their sessions are really long, which I like. And we simply did not just have the the editing power for our editors did a great job of sort of condensing stuff into half-hour chunks from like hour-long sessions. But
I feel like there's a place for that, and there's definitely a benefit to having that shorter form content. It's bite sized, so people, because honestly, like we did a thing where we were reviewing the second season of Critical Role for a while, and we had come to an internal decision to stop doing it, and Ted still watches, but I stopped immediately because it was just a huge chunk of time, and it's like I always felt like it was 2 hours of awesome entertainment spread out over 4 hours, right? Because that's what D&D is. It's not.
That's a thing, yeah.
It's not a knock on them or anything. It's just that, like, I like the idea of condensing it and getting to like just the good parts. And like honestly, when we were reviewing it, I would fall asleep during the fights.
Yeah.
And like it was the other stuff that I found way more interesting and fun was them interacting with each other and the NPCs.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because when it's like I said, you just sort of have to reframe your mind between like what's interesting as a player and what's interesting as a viewer. I don't mind really like the ones on Critical Role. I like the length of them because I would happily settle like when my favorite podcasts are like they have like a 3-hour episode. I'm like, great, give me because honestly, I think at least for something like Critical Role where there's the fan base is really familiar with it and really into RPGs. I think for the most part, they're happy to just, it's like, it's there to be watched and sort of kill time. It's like a fun way to kind of hang out.
Yeah, people like to chat in the chat. I know, like Ted will do it, during his day job, which is a lot of like routine tasks. He'll have it playing in the background.
Yeah.
I find
it's perfect for that.
Yeah, I find I can't focus on it, and I'm like, what happened? And like an hour going by, and I'm like, I have no idea what they did. So I have trouble with the attention on that. So we got Candy Cane again. I'm going to keep an eye on you, Candy Cane. Shane, who do you like better, Ryan or the Professor?
They're different people. Yeah, it's apples and oranges here. Ryan's a great guy. I disagree with his belief in the paranormal, but for the most part, we are friends. And
nobody's
professor, perfect. Yeah, the Professor's great, but he's a lot less capable of existing without me around. So it's kind of a toss-up. We'll call it a tie.
There we go. Call it a tie. Tie goes to the puppet. No, this is actually a great question. Tristan wants to know, can we get Watcher Boys playing horror games, please? It would be so fun to watch. Kind of feels like it kind of fits with some of the stuff you guys already do.
Probably. Is that in reference to like an Arkham Horror or specifically like video games? I don't know.
You could go either way. You could go board games, role-playing games, or video games.
I don't have a lot of tolerance for scary video games. I like video games a lot, but I don't like, and this maybe does not square with my ability to just stomp around a haunted house, but something about horror video games, I don't enjoy immersing myself in that world for hours at a time. Like, I don't find it fun. I'll play through I remember when the PT, the playable teaser for Resident Evil, was that Resident Evil? No, that was Silent Hill, came out for PS3 or PS4. That was really fun, but it was only like an hour-long sort of experience. And then I have Rush of Blood VR, which is really fun because you're on a roller coaster and you're like shooting things that pop up after you. These are fun to me. But when it comes to I tried playing the new Resident Evil game where you're just like in an old abandoned cabin in the woods and you're exploring this dingy basement. I was like, I can't keep doing this. I would rather just, I don't know, jump into Red Dead Redemption and ride around on my horse for, 6 hours.
There's nothing wrong with that, man. We like what we like.
I mean, I'm happy. What was that? And I would love to maybe do a playthrough of Amnesia, though. That may be the one I would like to dive into, because that is so extremely nerve-wracking to me of just like running around a castle and hiding from scary men, scary monster men. Seems fun. No weapons, great.
Nice. So Vanessa wants to know any plans on making a watch or gaming channel or a gaming show.
I don't know. It's weird because I would definitely have stuff to talk about with that, but I find that I tend to um, get deeply invested in like 2 video games a year. A lot of other stuff I just kind of dabble in, but it takes a lot for me to really sink my whole interest into a video game. I'm trying to think if I'm playing anything right now. Not really. Like Animal Crossing's out, but I'm not engaged enough with that. I can't care about it enough. I don't know why.
All of my friends are like insane with that right now, and I don't really play video games, and neither does my wife. Doesn't play those kinds of games. She's more like an app phone kind of person,
Yeah.
and she's like, why do I keep seeing people talking about turnips and these islands? What's going on? I'm like, oh, you've encountered those people, the Animal Crossing people.
I mean, it's fun, and I understand the appeal because I played like some Stardew Valley for a while.
Yeah.
I've been playing RimWorld again recently, which is a great. You're stranded in space and you have to sort of make a colony with people, but it sort of builds these like automated narratives for each member of your crew. Like someone might get sick and go crazy and try to murder people, and it all just kind of it ends up creating this like really unique narrative of how everyone survived or died in your crew. It's really fun.
As you do. So we're up on the hour mark, actually slightly past, and I want to respect your time. I appreciate you coming on and hanging out with us. Folks, if you enjoy us talking with different people about RPGs and other nerdy stuff, please hit the subscribe and a notification bell so that you can get notified. Any parting words, sir?
Hey, hope you're all staying safe and healthy out there, finding ways to, game with your pals on the internet. It's,
Awesome.
have fun.
Awesome. There are links in the pinned post. If you happen to wander over here and don't know who the Watcher is, I don't know how you couldn't. You can go check them out. And until next time, stay nerdy. And we're out.
Well, thanks for having me. That was real fun.